Oh, according to the powers that be, we are live. Thank you so much for tuning in for Excited Utterance. This is a round robin reading series that originated here in Chicago, where I am broadcasting from at this moment. And it's a crummy spring day in Chicago. But it's originated in 2014 as a live and in person series. And at one point, we lost the venue that we were in residency at, and then of course COVID occurred, and so during COVID, migrated online, and since uh, COVID went away, which it didn't, but anyway, we have remained an online series, which has actually enabled some writers to appear with me who might not normally be able to appear when the series was just in Chicago. So normally the series features poets, prose writers, nonfiction writers, pretty much anything is game for us. I think tonight I'm really proud to have two poets joining me for the show. And that would be, as you can see on the screen, David Kirby and Rochelle Hurt. Hello, you two. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, yes. Pleased to have you both here. Um, for those that are curious about what a round robin might be, it's an opportunity for writers, or in some cases musicians, to do little mini sets. So for tonight, we're each going to have three sets. The first two are a little bit longer than the last one. I have no idea what David and Rochelle have got planned. I barely know what I have planned. So I think if there's nothing else, we'll get started. David, Rochelle, do you have like a prayer or some sort of swearing you'd like to do before I send you down to the green room where the grapes are and they're delicious?
I'll say poetry saves lives.
Sounds good to me.
Seconded.
All right. So Rochelle's going to follow me in the order, and then David after Rochelle. So Rochelle, I will see you soon. Hang tight. Glad to have you. And then David, see you not quite as soon, but soon enough.
I'll be here.
Thank you so much for doing so. All right. Well, as it is for this quarterly series, my introduction is always like awkward and off the cuff. So I'm really glad that we're just kind of got things going. Really looking forward to hearing David and Rochelle read. Um, all right. So here's what I'm doing for this edition. We're quarterly, and I couldn't remember what I did the last time. And I looked, and I think what I ended up doing was going back and reading material from some past chat books that I put out. I just don't return to those at all now. But in this case here, I'm reading newer material, chronologically newer for sure. And I'm also reading longer pieces, except for the final pass, the third set, because I just don't usually read them. Well, I mean, that's the main reason. And so the first set is comprised of poems from a book that I had scheduled to come out, speaking of COVID, that was supposed to come out in February of 20 and has been delayed, and I think is still going to eventually come out. That's a long story, and you don't want me to go into it right now. But hopefully it will, because otherwise I'm going to have to start shopping the manuscript around again. The manuscript is called Frequently Asked Questions, and the first poem is Actor Portrayal. I am not a heartburn sufferer. I do not stay at La Quinta. My name is not Flo. I am not a talking lizard, concerned doctor, alcoholic attorney, proud parent, or umpire with low testosterone. I haven't fallen, and I can get up. I am not having a torrid affair with DA Jessica's daughter while helping her cover up the cliffhanger murder for hire of her former husband, a cruel astronaut. Do not assume I can rappel down skyscrapers, outrun fireballs, parkour eel-like through open windows, squeeze off round after round of assault weapon fire while sliding on my knees across rain-slicked pavement. I am not now, nor have I ever been, the kooky sidekick. If you punch me, I will cry. Underneath all this CGI, I have two-pack abs. I never once saved the city from any colorful villains. I am not the roguish bachelor with a tastefully decorated Toronto penthouse standing in for Manhattan, and you are not the unbelievably unattached 20-something reporter I will meet cute at the DMV. Hilarious hijinks ensue because we both coincidentally share the same name, bumping heads at the counter. A wisecracking Paul Giamatti as Clark the clerk stifles a dour smirk, sipping product placement Starbucks, while we don't playfully banter for the 35th consecutive take. Whew. All right, one down. This is called Tangent. It's inspired by some rather lengthy introductions to poems that I've encountered at readings. Tangent. This next poem is a new one, and it's based on a true story. I was in a pretty dark place when I wrote it, and by that I mean mentally, not dark as in low lighting, though now as I remember when I wrote it in the room it was pretty dark because one of the bulbs in the lamps had burnt out, and I had been so depressed because I'd lost my job and my girlfriend all in the same week, and I didn't have the energy to buy any bulbs, much less any money, which I then needed to watch because I'd lost my job. I mean, I still have to watch my money, but if I needed a bulb right now, I could run right out and get it, or two, or even three, or come to think of it, a lot of the time they're packaged in a box of four, and I could afford that. Buying four at a time would be smarter than just a single bulb. They'd be cheaper per bulb, and bulbs are the kind of thing it's always good to have a supply of. But back then, I wasn't in the right state of mind to be thinking intelligently about bulbs, or bottled water, or batteries, or any of those emergency supplies they say it's wise to have on hand. Like I said, I was in the dark and wrestling with my demons, which I know is a cliche, but as far as me at the time, it was true. I was at an all-time low, sitting in my spare, bulbless apartment and ruminating on a lot of stuff, not just about getting fired or breaking up with Brooke because I slept with her friend from the bar, which was a terrible mistake, I admit it, but we were both drunk and kind of did it on a dare and sorry about it the next day. Although it was awesome. She's cool and we like a lot of the same music, unlike Brooke. And even though we only did it once, we kept texting each other, and that's how Brooke found out. Anyway, she was none too happy and dumped me right before we were set to take a trip out east to meet her parents, which got me to thinking about my dad and what a hard ass he could be. And how when he died, I kind of compartmentalized it because we had one of those love-hate relationships that a lot of fathers and sons have, though ours was way more complicated. And it's a relationship that I'm still unraveling. The way you open a present, or better, the way you unwrap a bandage to change it when a wound is still not healed. And you can't help but stare at it all scabby and gross, and it gets you kind of woozy, but you keep on staring because what doesn't destroy you makes you stronger. And I remembered my dad's car and how it always smelled like cigarettes because he was such a heavy smoker, and how I'd be driving and the ash on his Camel would get really, really long and kind of curl over, but not break. And I'd be watching it the whole time, waiting for it to crack in half and fall, and how he'd swipe the seat where it fell or stomp on the floor, swearing, making sure it wasn't still lit. And the car would swerve and jerk a little, and the image of that red ash always stuck in my head. And that's what I mean in the first line. It's called a fiery falling ash. That requires a beverage for sure. Okay. So shockingly, I have one more here. I'm not, I think I'm sticking within the parameters of the time here. This is called Authorities, and then in quotes, escaped convicts could be literally anywhere. So, this book was supposed to come out in 2020, and this kind of dates where the story came from. This is the two prisoners who escaped from Dannemora, and then they ended up making the miniseries about it with Benicio del Toro and Paul Dano and Patricia Arquette. But I read about this probably in the New York Times. I don't remember exactly, but that headline, "Escape convicts could be literally anywhere," I didn't take as very soothing. So this is just riffing on that basic idea, and then after we'll bring Rochelle in to class up the joint. Authorities: escaped convicts could be literally anywhere. They could be hiding in one of the ramshackle farmhouses frequently found in this isolated region. They could be They could be hitchhiking alongside a long, lonely stretch of the interstate. They could have home invaded a local colonial, condo, rental, Cape Cod, flat, apartment, or timeshare. They could be napping in some Cadillac's commodious trunk. They could be afloat in a balloon over the moon. They could be crouching behind the counter at an all-night pharmacy, dispensing prescriptions and offering advice to avoid unwarranted attention. They could have camped out. They could have scored a cool million on slots at the casino. They could be in the bushes beyond the bait shop. They could be smuggled aboard the space shuttle blasting off, bound for Canis Major Dwarf. They could be spelunking in an old abandoned mine. They could be at the DMV, standing in line. They could have climbed the Statue of Liberty's torch. They could have mailed themselves to Mexico. They could be sailing the lake in a pilfered yacht. They could be in a dream, a thought, an idea, or a plot. They could be traversing the Tokaido Shinkansen somewhere between Tokyo and Osaka. They could be eluding dinosaurs, time machine on the fritz. They could have enlisted SEAL Team 7. They could be toasting the happy couple. They could be under a microscope in the lab. They could be jockeying American Pharaoh to Triple Crown renown. They could be in your closet, bathroom, pantry, or attic, on the roof, under the bed, in the larder, between the walls. They could be anywhere at all. All right. Let me retrieve Rochelle. Rochelle.
Hello.
Glad.
I don't know how much I'm going to class up the joint.
Oh, well, totally you are after me there. Sometimes, I haven't read this stuff in a while. Now, number one, and I'm saying this as a prelude for later as well, my pronunciations of things are dubious at times. So when the Tokaido Shinkansen, I hope I got that right. If I'm not saying that you would know or that David would know, but if someone out there is like, that is completely wrong, I apologize in advance for that. But did you see that Escape from Dannemora out of curiosity?
I haven't seen it.
No.
I've heard about the story and I've seen the previews for it, the little things that pop up, but haven't watched it.
Yeah. I haven't seen it either. So it's like, I didn't know if I got anything right with that, because it was just completely riffing on that idea. And I thought, well, maybe I accidentally actually got something right from it. But, well, I will knock it off here and switch my coffee for alcohol, which probably will help. And I'm looking forward to hearing you read. I guess that's all I need to say. Have at it.
All right.
And then we'll see you next time around.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So I'm going to read, as I mentioned, I don't know how much I'm going to class up the joint. I'm going to read from one of my books called The J Girls, a reality show that features poems in the voices of 5 teenage girls who are making a reality show about themselves and their lives, and acting like you might expect people on a reality show to act. So these poems, because it is a reality show, they all have little scene descriptions, as if you're watching a found VHS tape. I'm not going to read all those, but I'll read this one. So this poem is called Less is More. It's in the voice of one of the girls named Jocelyn. They all have J names. And the scene description says this is in a high school cafeteria. Jocelyn stands in an empty cafeteria wearing a red tube top and a silver miniskirt. Posters hang on the wall behind her: reduce, reuse, recycle, the hang in there kitten, and a diagram of a cartoon girl that illustrates proper skirt length and notes all hair colors must come directly from God, as well as a flyer for Modesty Club on which someone has drawn a vulva. Catholic school, by the way. Less is more. We fast through lunch and pocket pills at recess. Gold letters on our gym class asses crown us each a princess. School nuns scold, so we dig little graves in our minds, and they fill them with etiquette. Bet they'll better us yet. In church, our voices rise, a sour choir of spit and pride. We stir the nuns' words in our mouths till they curdle. Less is more. At home, our mean mothers pour Suave into Avon bottles, stacking dimes as we lie like strips of jerky on our roofs. We tan, we turn, we cure ourselves and wonder how far down our throats can these new woman hands go. Together, we trace rows of looping red X's and O's into our arms with paring knives. We carve our skin to the bone, becoming instruments of less. But we make it up in excess. Rhinestone eyelids, 2-inch acrylics, hair frosted in 3 tones. Each hotbox ride with garage boys is a fantasy of proving the nuns right. We see the road stop like a cartoon cliff, and we're driving on air till someone looks down and we drop, and that's all we've wanted. To hell with other kids' futures, our parents tired, rising above. A new high, the long whistle of wind like a lullaby against the slicked reeds of these whittled bodies as we fall glittering to the bottom. This next one is a prayer of sorts. As I mentioned, these girls go to Catholic school in the 90s, as I did. And one of them speaks almost exclusively in prayers and soap opera fragments. So this is one of Jennifer's prayers. It's called Prayer for Effacement. Oh, my fear snuffer, my sensitive sigh huffer, my infernal grace breather, my sin sucker, my most holy vampire, my tawdry tear drinker, my gory grief strainer, my pulpy vice eater, my dull mind cleaver, my gentle heart surgeon, my acid bath, my quick drying lime wash, my most patient primer, my tongue scrape, my meticulous airbrush, my aerial light box, my traveling sunspot, my beautiful cataract, my personal snow machine, my salt and plow, my spongy ink blotter, my stack of sorries, my emergency stain stick, my cup of bleach, my benevolent eraser. Make me an eternal thumbprint, your most stubborn spot of grease. This next one is a monologue from another one of the girls, Jackie. She speaks in odes a lot, her monologues. And this one is an ode on upspeak, which if you don't know what that is, it's when you talk as if everything you say is a question. So you go up at the ends of your sentences. And young girls and teen girls get criticized for this a lot. But it is just sort of a natural way of speaking, depending on who you are, where you are, what kinds of groups you're in. So this is an ode to my upspeak. I admire its belligerent uncertainty. I'll know if I know when I please. Pointed indecision as auto prick that sticks my sentence tip. When my tongue spring toes into a run, I vault across silences, sucking this tick like perpetual mint, surprised but satisfied. I want all my action rising, okay? While we're at it, I dig my ums, impervious little monks who squat in well-spaced rows, their insistent vibrato, a hypno chant that spins my speech to incantation. I love how they punctuate, bead-like, my vocal fry, that holy string to which I cling, Its creak makes me speak like a crumb scraper, savoring the linen tablecloth. I lick the conversation down and shake each glottal rattle at the sky, my diphthong kernels popping in a thrum that sets me singing like an optimist. I've got nowhere to go but up. All right, this is the last one from the J Girls, and the last one in this set that I'll read. This is a monologue from Jocelyn, covering almost all the girls tonight. This one takes on a familiar phrase, sort of an aphorism, just like less is more, and this aphorism is silence is golden. Silence is golden, a scold not beholden to trite mothers or regret-tongued nuns who teach us to never appear as smart as a man because a bird in the fist is worth the whole wedding. Find bliss in spilled milk, they say. Ignorance is an upper hand. How's the rest? Catch more men with the honey jar open and a bed soaked in vinegar is a woman's work never done by a girl well begun who's only half fun. But good things come to those who flock together, who pluck their own feathers and stock their pots with bad weather. So never pick up stones you can't throw, never count your bones in the bathwater, and never keep your babies in a glass house. If you don't have anything nice to say, for God's sake, don't lead a gift horse to your mouth. Look, don't beat a dead bliss. A hitch in time saves tears down the line. Besides, one idle hand will just watch the other clench up. Remember, the devil is in a detailed disguise. That's it for this set.
My turn?
I think it is your turn. I don't know where Larry is, but
Okay.
Oh, I mean,
He's
I'm popping in again just to let you know. Yeah, I'm just gonna stay out and just do the segues. So
okay.
I could hang out down here in the corner, but you don't want me doing that, believe me. So
Yeah.
So let me go back to the dungeon where I belong.
Just don't make faces and crack me up, okay? But yes, thank you so much. This is so much fun. I've been reading Rochelle for a while, and it's glad to actually see her face and pretend we're kind of in the same digital room, if not a real one. But here we are, and I got to say, I'm looking forward to those moments when we can all get together and chat and go back and forth a little bit, because I might have a question or two. But I do want to say that it's well, as Rochelle will tell you, here in the state of Florida, we have no poet laureate. Technically, Peter Meinke was the poet laureate, but he hasn't been active in that job since 2019. That's a long time to go without a poet laureate, considering that there's one in every nation, municipality. I have a former student of mine, Laura Matherick, is the poet laureate of Coconut Creek, Florida. So if they can have one, why can't Florida? Well, there's a good reason why, which is that I mean, who would want one? You can't tell what these poets are going to do anyway. So I think we all should kind of act like the poet laureate and spread the gospel. And part of the way I do that is just being maybe a little teachery, a little professory, and talking about where poems come from and how you can sustain them and wrap them up nicely at the end. So I'm going to read during this first appearance of mine a poem that's more or less about Marie Curie. You all probably know this, but I remember when I read that she, of course, died of radium poisoning because she worked with that material without knowing how toxic it was. But unless they've changed things, all of her notes, her garments, experimental things, and lab equipment are all in a lead box because they're too toxic to be opened. Well, with our ability to figure these things out, they'll probably be opened someday. But I just thought about that for a long, long time, and ended up writing a poem about it. And the way I do, I brought in a lot of other stuff as well. And not long ago, I was at high school in Jacksonville and doing a master class. And one of the students said, I'm having trouble. I love science. I really want to write about science. Can you tell me how to do that? And I had never been asked that question before. And I said, well, I don't know that I can tell you, but let me show you something here. I just happen to have this poem called, and it's right here. Yep. The Night We Met, You Told Me About Marie Curie. And the idea is you can work anything into a poem. You can tackle any subject matter in the world if you make it a conversation. So it goes like this. The first thing you tell me is she wasn't Jewish. But stupid people will always look askance at anyone who is female, foreign, and accomplished, you say. She'd already won the Nobel Prize in Physics 8 years earlier, and in 1911, her affair with a fellow scientist named Paul Langevin became public, so the right-wing press vilified Curie as a foreigner and an atheist, which is pretty hypocritical, you say, since the newspapers portrayed her as a godless Jew whenever she won a French prize, though somehow she was hailed as a true daughter of France when another country recognized her achievements and she received a foreign prize such as the Nobel. Well, was she an atheist, I say? No idea, you say, though certainly a foreigner since she came from Poland, where she studied at an underground school called the Flying University that met in private homes in Warsaw so that young Poles could be free from the warped ideology of their Russian occupiers. And that must have been dangerous, I say. And then I remember a story I'd read about a mountaineer who's walking across a Swiss glacier when he hears a crack beneath his feet and then a creak and then like a trapdoor opening, he drops, jamming in the ice at belly level, the air punched from his lungs. The lower half of his body is much colder than the top. And of course, he kicks in the emptiness until he realizes that the movement might dislodge him. So he stops, his toes dangling until his climbing partner hauls him out the way you might pull a drowning man from a pool. And you say, he's a guy, right? A man? And I said, yeah, he's a guy. And you say you just read an article about all the mammoth carcasses that have been found lately. And thing is, they're all male. Swallowed by a sinkhole, washed away by a mud flow, drowned after falling through thin ice. The males of every species tend to do stupid things that end up getting them killed in silly ways, you say. And apparently that's true for mammoths as well. Yes, I say, but no danger, no fun. What gives value to travel is fear, according to Camus. And I'm paraphrasing him, but you don't seem to mind. So when we are far from our own country, says Camus, we are seized by fear and an instinctive fear to go back to our old habits. And at that moment, we are feverish, but also porous, so that the slightest touch makes us quiver to the depths of our being. At least I think that's what Camus said. Feverish, porous, slightest touch. I didn't mean to, but I'm talking sexy now, though we've only just met. And I don't want to scare you off, so I say, okay, back to Marie Curie. Didn't she win a second Nobel Prize? And didn't she die from radiation poisoning? And you say, yes, she won another Nobel in 1911, this time in chemistry. And yes, she had the habit of carrying test tubes of radium around in the pocket of her lab coat. And she died of aplastic anemia, which they think was caused by prolonged exposure to radiation. She did her job too well, I say, and you nod, and you say, she did her job too well. And that's it for me. That's when I tell myself that you're the one, that no matter what, I'm not going to let you go ever. So I say, can you really do your job too well? And you say, yes, because in 1204, the Venetian navy couldn't breach the walls surrounding Constantinople. So their engineers built bridges. Turning a page. The engineers built bridges 100 feet long and hauled them up the ship's masts and set their far ends down on the enemy's battlements. Though when the knights in armor saw those bridges, they said, no, not us. They were used to terrestrial battle and paled at the thought of fighting in midair above a rolling sea. Those engineers are too good at their job, you say. And if there's one thing I don't want to be right now, it's too good at my job, because I'm really, really, really crazy about you. And I'm trying to do everything I can to woo you without letting you see how hard I'm trying. So I say, well, what's Marie Curie's legacy? I guess later scientists built on Marie Curie's work, right? And you say that her notes and research materials were so radioactive that they're too dangerous to examine. So they're kept in lead-lined boxes, which is when I ask, if I can kiss you, and you say, no, you can't, and then yes. So that's how you write about science. That's how you write about history. That's how you write about anything. I mean, there's an I in that poem, but it's not me, or it might be young man David wooing his wife, transcendent American poet Barbara Hamby. Could be that, but it's a persona, and he's talking about that. So you can write about anything if you have two people going back and forth, and as you two know, the pleasure in writing just about anything is finding out that you're being led to a place that you didn't know you were being led to, and as you saw there, that turned out to be a love poem as well. So I think that might be pretty close to my time. Let's go back to Larry. Can't hear you, Larry.
Yep. I just realized I the mute. Yeah, I was going to say that's not nearly enough Kirby for me, but I think I was like trying to do my administerial things here. And where is that Marie Curie poem from?
You mean like a magazine, or since you just happened to mention it, why I happen to have a copy right here. This is from the Winter Dance Party.
There we go.
Which is a book by David Kirby. It's 40 years of poems. It's kind of a semi-collected or an anti-collected, because you see it's a fat fella here. It's 280 pages. But the thing is that I like every one of my poems, but there's no reason to think that you would. So I culled them pretty carefully, and I'm looking up at Frank O'Hara's collected poems on my shelf here, which almost takes up a shelf. And I'm glad somebody saved all of his poems, but I wonder if he would have done that when he was alive, because some of them are a little bit on the sketchy side. So yeah. It comes from that book. It does indeed.
Yeah, I think I read it in the magazine originally, wherever or online or wherever it was, because as you're reading it, it was very familiar. But I think part of what was so familiar about it is it was, and I put a comment in, on the Facebook stuff here about we're in full Kirby mode now. That sort of like embrace of history, the embrace of. And you said something about this early on. You can write a poem about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you do that sort of thing really well, I think. Your poems have like tendrils that go out from them.
One question I get a lot when I do Q&A at these different master classes or schools that I visit is, what do you do about burnout, or what do you do about writer's block? To which I say, there's just too much to write about. And I say thank God to Wikipedia. I'm one of the 3% of the people who give them $100 every year, because I didn't know all that stuff about Marie Curie until I looked it up, and I assumed it's accurate. If it's not, please don't tell me, because they all make good stories. But I also tell my students to keep bits journals as well, which are just journals in which they throw things that they might not use for a year, 2 years, 10 years. And you like the whole thing about the Crusaders and trying to conquer Constantinople. I mean, can't you see these guys? Each one is weighing 400 pounds of armor, right? And Franco or Michele says, okay, get up there on that crosswalk, that 6-inch wide plank, and you can walk over to Constantinople, and we're going to kick their infidel behinds. And the guy said, are you kidding? It's 120 feet to the sea. If I fall in, I'm going straight to the bottom. And that's a bit. It was there in my journal, and when I needed something else, the whole idea of the trickery of wooing someone else is to kind of keep them interested, but not be too pushy. So I needed the guy to keep talking. So I threw that in there as well.
I think that the bits idea kind of reminds me. I don't know why I think it kind of reminds me of Paul Westerberg, from the Replacement.
Yeah.
He used to. I don't know. I don't think he's writing anything anymore now. At least not that he's out for consumption. But that he would write things piecemeal. You know, he just wrote things down.
Yeah.
Then he'd go later and he would go through all the stuff he had written and try to put it together into some meaning, you know, I don't know, I'm not quoting him, but meaningful way.
Right.
And, you know, so much of that stuff just seems to hang together very naturally. And by that, I don't mean necessarily narratively, but it's like, oh, it's hard to imagine these things all came from such disparate places.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about a conversation. Anything pops into it. By the way, I love Paul Westerberg and the Replacements because they were always gigging, always working,
Yeah.
and they were always spontaneous. Out of which spontaneity, you know, came an illustrious career and some great 90 second, you know, 150 beat a minute songs. And my favorite Paul Westerberg quote is the techie one time at one of his concerts said, you know, you just lean your guitar against an amp and it always falls over. You know, we have to get, you know, guitar stands for you to put your guitar in. And Westerberg said, guitar stands. He said, next thing you know, we'll have backup singers. You know, so you know, don't overthink it. Don't complicate it, people. Just keep writing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I love your stuff. Looking forward to hearing more from you. And it's a pleasure having you here, David.
You bet.
All right. So now you can relax and I will take over. Such as it is. Wow. Well, I could, you know, and I have to say, David, I could have kept that conversation going for a while, and I'm just trying to move this along in a discreet fashion here, but love it. Now, the poem and the discussion. So, all right, for this next set, I'm going to read two pieces from a book that I'm shopping around. That is poems that were inspired by. I'm a movie fan, and I like horror films, and I like all kinds of things. But there's a director named Lucio Fulci who actually directed movies in multiple genres, but he's pretty much known later in his career. He just made horror films, and some of them are very surreal and dreamlike and weird. And you know, he's not one of my favorite directors necessarily, but there's a lot of just really interesting stuff that goes on in his movies. So during the pandemic, I, you know, like so many people, I, you know, needed to do something to keep my mind off of the hell outside the window. And so I did this book based on his films, all of which I haven't seen. So the first thing I'm going to read of the two is, it's called A Man to Laugh, which is a 1980 miniseries that he directed. That's actually like a comedy drama. And I haven't seen it. It's only available in Italian. And I don't think, at least I haven't checked recently, but when I was doing the book, I was mainly interested in the titles as inspiration. And this one just kind of struck me for that reason. A Man to Laugh just seemed kind of interesting to me. And the fact that it was, again, he directed things in a lot of genres, a lot of comedies, but this one just sounded self-referential in certain ways because it's about a man who it's like vaguely autobiographical, not written by Fulci. Guy who works in the movies and has like suffered a setback in his career and has become contemplative. So the whole poem is structured around the 6 episodes that again I couldn't watch, or I could watch some of them online, but they're all only in Italian. So it's kind of put together from these badly translated plot synopses. And I have not read it before, or at least I haven't read it in a while. So I like to push myself in this sort of area, like read something I'm not comfortable with. So let's do it. A Man to Laugh, and this again goes with if I butcher the Italian names here, I apologize in advance. So the only other thing I will let you know, and then I promise I'll read, is that there's a character here named Toto. And I had no idea who this. I thought, oh, the dog from The Wizard of Oz, and then I realized, oh no, this is this actor who was really well known in Italy for being this character Toto. Picture of me looks like quite an interesting man, but so that is who I'm referring to in here. All right, here we go. A Man to Laugh. Episode 1. This week, Toto and the voice of Toto from heaven talked to Bianco Bianchi. Nora Norris chats with Osvaldo and Miriam Benetti while a latecomer spectator watches. Everyone acts. Credits. Episode 2. This week, Bianco Bianchi reveals to Anarita Toto and the voice of Toto from heaven communicate with Bacino and Osvaldo. Osvaldo describes to Adamo Amletti. Renatina expresses to Mario Merola. Magnotti and Nora Norris gossip. Cut to a waiter and a bartender. Cut to the head of Cinecittà and edition secretary and private secretary and movie director and 3 background actors and 2 blacks and a clapper boy and an electrician. Everyone acts. Credits. Episode 3. This week, Bianco Bianchi persuades a madam. Renatina, Anarita, and Adamo Amletti prattle. Toto and the voice of Toto from heaven soliloquize to Osvaldo. Vincenzan spouts to Imordini. Richard and Antonio Sabato yak. Cut to a gypsy, 3 bodybuilders, a paramilitary police marshal, a bartender, and a bandit on horseback. Cut to the jack of all trades at Cinecittà, 3 crew members, an American film director, an assistant director, and 3 background actors, with Duccio Tessari as himself. Everyone acts. Credits. Episode 4. This week, a voiceover spills the beans. Toto and the voice of Toto from heaven spout. Bianco Bianchi and Antonio Sabato prattle. Spinetti rhapsodizes. Litz squeaks. Richard, Anarita, and Mozzeni flap their tongues. Lella, Vincenzan, and Adamo Amletti tell all. Cut to a restaurant owner, maitre d' and waiter. Cut to a furniture maker, the landlady's daughter, a square dance conductor, 2 photographers, and cinema director. Everyone acts. Credits. Episode 5. This week, Bianco Bianchi articulates to Anarita. Toto and the voice of Toto from heaven babble to Adamo Amletti. Renatina and Miriam Benetti ventriloquize. Cut to 2 background actors and a 30-year-old critic. Everyone acts. Credits. Episode 6. This week, Toto and the voice of Toto from heaven broach to Bianco Bianchi and Nora Norris. Mario Merola confesses to Anarita. Osvaldo and Renatina divulge to Adamo Amletti. Cut to a general inquirer, 3 roundtable participants, 4 background actors, a 30-year-old critic, and Cecilia Bonacore, uncredited, as herself. Everyone acts. Credits. So, revisiting this and reading this again, I'm remembering a little bit of the process. And again, just for what it's worth, going through this stuff in Italian. These are the character names, and the conceit of like Toto, the actor, was being played by someone else. I think he had died before this. I don't know if they could have gotten him anyway. And then also his voice from heaven was speaking to this guy. I mean, the whole thing sounds quite surreal. And some of these, like when this is what it reminded me of, a square dance conductor shows up, and just these kind of weird characters show up. And of course, it's supposed to be a movie being made or whatever, but the whole thing just sounds really wild and kind of again reminded me of what I do like about Fulci, is that he just kind of like goes all in for it when he's at his best. So, all right, I've got one more from that collection, and I'll put it out there. If you know of anybody that might be interested in something that intersects with poetry and film and surrealism, horror, whatever, let me know because I'd like to get this published. This is called Murder Rock, Dancing Death, and it's a sestina actually, which is a a poem with 6 stanzas, 6 lines per stanza. There's repeating N words in a traditional sestina. And at the end of it, there's a 3-line envoy where those words all appear in a certain order. And the words repeat in a pattern throughout. But in this case, what I did is this Murder Rock Dancing Death is an 1984 film by Fulci, which I have seen. And it's just like a murder mystery. It's actually one of his more low-key movies in some respects. And I took the names of the characters, and they become what would be the 6 repeating words that rotate throughout. Of course, it was a little difficult because the names had to be at the end of all these lines, and so the syntax gets a little tortured. But when I was reading through it again earlier today, I thought, oh yeah, I think I do like this. And it has at the end of the movie, there's an epigraph that's from the Asphalt Jungle. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen the movie. I have no idea why it was there, except in the broadest sense. It's just such a great line anyway. Crime is only a left-handed form of human endeavor. So I included that as well. So here we go. Murder Rock Dancing Death, my Lucio Fulci-inspired sestina. Directress of prestigious ballet academy, Candace Norman. Handsome model and dream assailant, George Webb. Academy director, Dick Gibson. From the New York Police Department, Lieutenant Borges. Accompanying Lieutenant Borges, Professor Davis. The victim's boyfriend, Willie Stark. Susan's boyfriend, Willie Stark. Preparing for a visit from 3 talent agents, Candace Norman. Police profiler and psychotherapist, Professor Davis. A wreck, drunk and disheveled, George Webb. Arriving on the scene to investigate, Lieutenant Borges. TV producers Bob Steiner and John Morris meet with Dick Gibson. Candace discusses potential relationships between students with Dick Gibson. Susan's murder in the locker room by an unseen person saddens Willie Stark. Suspicious of Candace, Willie Stark and Dick Gibson, Lieutenant Borges. Being attacked by a handsome young man in her nightmares, Candace Norman. Going to the academy to return Candace's purse, George Webb. About the lion's head hairpin, Candace speaks to Lieutenant Borges and Professor Davis. The lion's head hairpin used in the killings, Candace informs Professor Davis. George and Candace are seen on a security monitor by Dick Gibson. All the dancers who have been killed are in a music video shown by George Webb. Susan, chloroformed and stabbed in the heart with a long hairpin, vexes Willie Stark. In the past, a man on a motorcycle hit and run Candace Norman. Talking to Dick about a possible rivalry between the dancers is Lieutenant Borges. A phone call by a person claiming to be the killer is recorded by Lieutenant Borges. Information that was not made public is given by Candace to Professor Davis. A hairpin and a bottle of chloroform is found in George's hotel room by Candace Norman. Telling Lieutenant Borges that George must be the killer is Dick Gibson. That nobody seems to care about Susan's death upsets Willie Stark. The hit-and-run motorcycle rider who ran Candace over, ruining her career, is George Webb. Lieutenant Borges is confessed to about the hit-and-run accident by George Webb, stating his belief that Bart is not the killer, but a pathological liar, is Lieutenant Borges. The victim's boyfriend remains Willie Stark. Bart is not the killer, but a pathological liar, Lieutenant Borges tells Professor Davis. When he's found running away, the police arrest Dick Gibson. Who killed all those dancers out of jealousy of their rising careers? Candace Norman. The victim's boyfriend, Willie Stark. Hit-and-run motorcyclist, George Webb. Murderer, Candace Norman. NYPD's rep, Lieutenant Borges. Police profiler and psychotherapist, Professor Davis. Who found Jill dead? Dick Gibson. All right. Let me get Rochelle in here. Rochelle, how are you?
Good. It's great to hear those. I love when poems interact with the screen, TV and film.
Um, could you follow the plot more or less of that last one? I mean, it might be asking a lot here, but I don't know that
Yeah.
I don't know if that was my intention doing it originally. It was just kind of like getting caught up in the conceit of, all right, you don't use a word for this sestina, but instead it's a name. But then the names are at the end of the lines, and so it can get a little tiresome. But then you got to tweak it a little bit. But then when I was reading back through it today, I was like, oh boy, I think I can kind of follow the plot of this here, and I don't know that was. I think chronology was important to me when I was doing it, so more or less following that, which I guess is kind of the same thing. But I don't think my goal was to make the plot evident. But I kind of think it still happened anyway. So
Yeah. I think so.
do you write where you incorporate references to movies, cinema?
Well, the J Girls is all about TV and reality TV, and the chapters are formatted as episodes of the show.
Yeah.
So that kind of got me into writing poetry and other stuff that interacts with screenplay and script, using some of the format attributes of screen and script writing. So now I'm working on a collection of essays that's kind of part personal material and part horror movie analysis.
So you're a horror fan as well, or
Oh
you're?
yeah,
Oh
big
yeah.
time.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
well, we got to talk about this later then. Yeah, for sure. Fulci stuff?
No, I don't. I'm not as familiar. I gotta say, I love bad horror, like B horror.
Oh, sure. No, I think we could definitely talk about this. But if one was to see any Fulci, maybe his most best known is the movie The Beyond. It's
Okay.
got a great ending. I mean, there's things about it. If I'll look at it, I'll kind of be like, oh no, that's so cheesy. But the cheese doesn't really get in the way, I don't think. Which leaning into the B horror thing. This is a guy who never had any big budgets, even when he did the war movies and the police procedurals and the comedies and everything when he was younger. Seeing the seams is kind of part of the charm in any of this stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, I will gracefully bow out. Looking forward to hearing your next set, and then we'll see you again on the last pass.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks. All right. So this set, I'm going to read from a different book that was actually a collaboration with another writer named Carol Guess, who writes great poetry, fiction, hybrid work, everything in between. We wrote this book together, and it's called Book of Non, because all of the poems in the book kind of riff on the idea of non-entities and words that depend on this idea of non. So like non-matter, non-compliant, non-committal, non-fiction. And we did that because we were thinking about what it means to be defined against what you are not, specifically because we were both writing about the experience of being women of a certain age who are not mothers, and what it means to be a non-mom, and have that be part of your definition of who you are. So in addition to the non-poems, which I'll read a couple of, there are poems about a character in here named non-mom. So I'm going to read one non-mom poem, which reads a little more like a fable, and then two non-apology poems. Non-mom's baby boom. My best friend was taken by a baby. She entered the maternity ward through a long white corridor and came back changed. I know I'm still me, she said, but her eyes were searching. A couple years later, my sister disappeared inside her own house. Calls reached me from time to time, but on the line, just wailing. Then everything sped up. It was only a month until another friend went into hiding beneath her baby's crib. I have to be very quiet, she said, craning her neck to look up at me from under the crib, or he'll hear us and we'll both be sorry. That was the year babies descended on the whole town. We saw them coming, of course, but they seemed so far away at first, like meteors. Watching them became a yard game, croquet, lawn darts, baby gazing. That one might hit me, I said one night, making a visor from my hand and pointing, but nobody was around to hear. It was quiet, except for the distant crying. The streetlights had been smashed out, and there was just one other woman in the dark with me now, standing on the sidewalk. It looked like she was bleeding, though it was hard to see. "You're so lucky," she called as she jogged away, carrying her baby. "You can go anywhere you please." And this one is one of the non-apology poems in the book. Non-apologies. My first school art project was a mask made from damp apologies. I laid them over my face, and when the hard shell dried, I removed it, a bowl of sorry, and knew just what I looked like. When my sister and I would visit our dad on holidays, he never had any toys for us to play with, so he'd just place a bucket of apologies between us and walk away. We built whole cities with them. In junior high, I carried my apologies around in my purse like loose Tic Tacs, envious of how organized everyone else's apologies seemed. Like Louise, she kept her apologies stacked in the bottom of her locker. She'd pull one out with a manicured hand, and that's how you knew she liked you. Once, I cornered a desperate, tampon-less Louise in the locker room with a fistful of apologies, and she just said, "Fuck off." I remember that on prom night, I wore my apologies like a tube dress and let my date peel them off my body, one at a time. He looked bored, but he kept peeling. In college, I learned to dole out my apologies more carefully. But when I got drunk on amaretto, I would go for walks late at night, and when I'd startle, I'd spray them like mace into strangers' eyes. Most evenings now, my apologies just sit quietly on the couch with me, like non-apologies. "It's getting late," I say, and they crochet themselves into a nightgown big enough to drown in. And this is the last one, another non-apologies. My apologies are anger groupies. I watch them fling themselves at furious men with abandon. They love to gather in fancy hotel lobbies, all gowns and tails and gems, counting the rich people who will bump into them. To understand this, you should probably know that in high school, my apologies went through a brief phase of binging and purging, which only made everyone hate them. At work lately, my apologies seem distracted, and I've caught them wearing sunglasses inside more than a few times. I think I've grown to hate them too. Sometimes I fantasize about finding my apologies dead in a Kroger parking lot. A crowd will gather, craning their necks to see the wreckage. Bright drops of "excuse me" and "my bad" spattered across BMWs and grocery carts. Afterward, everyone will say that they are very sorry for the loss of my apologies. But in private, they'll say it was no surprise, merely a matter of time, since my apologies were the loosest in the neighborhood. And I'll admit, they gave themselves away too freely. That, I'll say to everyone, I deeply regret. That's it for that set.
Oh, is it my turn?
I think you're up, David.
Oh, rats! Yeah, I want to see. I'd love to see the format. Can you show me the format of that one of the J Girl poems?
Oh yeah, like hold it up for you?
Like hold it up for me and the gang out there.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, that one's got writing all over it.
We talk about this. I bet you do too. We talk about this in my workshop all the time because Charles Wright said the greatest thing. Go ahead, show it. Let's see. Got it. Oh, you have that tongue and groove thing where they're all connected with the stage directions up at top, right?
Yeah. So they've all got the stage directions. They've got a label because some of them are monologues. Is it backwards? It's like reverse.
No, it's backwards to you. It's forward to us, though.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thank you. Charles Wright says everything's already been said. Poems will tell you, I love you, or I'm sorry, I'm dying, or whatever. And so he said, the only thing that matters now is the delivery system. How do we change it? How do we make it more effective? Which, like a lot of things poets say, is a bunch of hooey, but still, it's got so much truth to it because format is tremendous. And I know that it's not a problem with grad students, but if somebody's a sophomore and a junior, they think that the words are the whole thing, right? But it's how the words are packaged, shaped, and I sound like Jeff Bezos here, but how they end up on your doorstep, that determines whether they're going to enter the reader's heart or enter the consumer's heart and make them want to buy some more. But anyway, I was I'm in a bad mood now because I was just about to eat this piece of pie that Barbara brought me, but we can get to that later. Larry, you really need to have Barbara on here one time. Now that it's too late, let me say she's a better poet than I am, and just a great guest, and she's a great reader. We read together a lot. I mean, I'm not addicted to heroin or golf, and Barbara's a non-mom. So she doesn't have these ungrateful, wretched kids to care for. So we spend all of our time, reading and writing and talking about poetry. And she's got a new book called Burn coming out this fall from the University of Pittsburgh Press. And so, we're going to be out and about. But I think about lining up Barbara for maybe a fall or spring appearance there, because she's good stuff, guaranteed.
Love.
I gotta say, I'm a huge Barbara Hamby fan.
Oh, I'll tell her that. That's not going to hurt her.
I teach her poems all the time.
Oh, great.
That's not just because of that delicious looking piece of pie. I got a flash of it for a second there, and I thought, oh, I'm so sorry I interrupted, pious interruptus or whatever.
Yeah. Look at it. It's actually a pear and almond cake. It's got little slices of pear. Listen, I'm going to hurry up. I'm going to hurry up because I want to eat that thing. Yeah. I'm
taking myself back out here. All right, here we
go. Okay. All right. So, as you probably get the idea, I'm always happy when other people write my poems for me, whether it's Wikipedia or somebody else. And so I use lots of people's stories. That I have plenty of stories, but you can't go out and just make a story happen. So I'll use somebody else's story if they let me do it. And so people actually walk up and tell me stories. Former student of mine a little while back was in the house and said, I said, "What's up at your school?" And she said, "Well, the last year's teacher of the year got fired for having sex with a student." And I said, "Oh my gosh, how did they find out?" She said, "Well, they broke a window." And then she said, "But you can't use that in a poem." And I said, "Too late. If you Mirandize me and say, I want to tell you a story, but don't use it in a poem, okay. But if you just tell me the story, it's like picking up the newspaper. It's mine." So this is one of those cases where, since I have this kleptomaniacal reputation, somebody just walked up, a guy I didn't really know, and the first words out of his mouth were the title of this poem, "My Girlfriend Killed James Brown." Guy walks up to me in the park and says, "My girlfriend killed James Brown." And I start to say, "Do I know you?" But I don't want to miss out on the story, so I say, "No lie." And he says, "Yeah." He says, "I got bumped up to first class, and when I saw who my seatmate was, I went back to economy and told my girlfriend. And even though she had the flu, we switched places. And 3 weeks later, James Brown is dead." How'd you like that on your resume? Or anyone's death, though that didn't bother the local woman who got life recently for murdering her husband because, according to the trial transcript, she didn't want to, quote, "suffer the shame of a divorce," end quote. Nothing good comes from murder. Well, if you murder Hitler, yeah, but suppose you murder Hitler and somebody worse takes his place. That girlfriend didn't mean to kill James Brown. Accidental death's a whole other kettle of fish. Imagine the girlfriend sometime later on another flight, and she dozes off in the middle of a movie, and she wakes up, and she notices everyone else is sleeping, including the flight attendant. And she rings the call button, but nobody comes. And she shakes her seatmate's arm, but he doesn't respond either. And that's when she thinks, these people aren't sleeping. But the plane keeps flying and it lands somehow. She finds herself at an arrival gate and at a cab stand, and she doesn't know where she wants to go, though the cabbie seems to. And everyone is happy and friendly, even though they're a little distant, she says to herself, as though they're in this place but not really of it. And here she is finally in a room with white walls and statues and niches and portraits of people she doesn't recognize, and a floor that's lit from beneath, and people have cups of tea and finger sandwiches, and they're ordinary people for the most part, but Otis is there, and Sam Cooke, and Aretha, and someone taps her on the shoulder and says, try these. And she puts her hand to her mouth and begins to cry. She says, oh, Mr. Brown, I'm so sorry I killed you. And he says, that's okay, baby. He says, I'm better now. I'm glad I'm here. I feel good. Take a cookie. Take a macaroon. And she says, what about the jam thumbprints? Are they good too? And he's saying, it's all good here, baby. And she says, I'll just have one. I don't want to spoil my appetite. What time's dinner? And he says, oh, baby, we don't believe in that. And she said, you don't believe in dinner? He says, no, we don't believe in time. We stopped that long ago. And she says, who did? How? And he says, Fats did when he sang Walking to New Orleans. Tina stopped time when she sang Fool in Love. Buddy Holly did it with Not Fade Away. Same way Mozart did with that night music thing. And she says, Mr. Brown, you know a lot more about classical music than I would have thought. And then you wouldn't happen to be familiar with a 1956 French opera called Dialogues of the Carmelites, would you? And he says, know it. I wrote that shit. And she says, now, you didn't do that. That was Francis Poulenc. And he says, time don't stop for one person. One person stops time. Somebody comes in contact with what you've done. They catch some of that. That's the way it works. One by one, them 16 nuns stepped up to the guillotine, and one by one, them revolutionaries cut their heads off. So there were 15 singing, then 14, then none. Silence can be louder than anything you know. The sound of silence, says James Brown. And what is a man's world if not classical? Full orchestra score, dark tones, nuanced lyrics. That fat Italian motherfucker knocked it over the center wall every time. And just then a voice says, who are you calling fat? And James Brown says, oh, sorry, Luciano. Have a cookie. Oh, okay, have all the cookies. As a man steps into the room and says, Brown, party of two. And James Brown gives the girlfriend his arm, and they go in. But the dining room is the kitchen she grew up in. And her parents are sitting at the table. Her father in a jacket and tie, and her mother in a pretty dress and that bright red lipstick she adored. And they smile and wave, but they don't really seem to know her either. And she says, holy cow, this looks like the house I grew up in. Is this the house I grew up in? As Janis Joplin scurries through with a tray on her shoulder and says, you have a new friend, James? And James Brown says, yep, we met on a plane. Nice lady, huh? As Janis disappears into the kitchen and her parents look up again. And this time her mother says, darling, is that you? And her father says, that's her, Miriam. Here, honey, have a seat. And she sits and says, Mom, Dad, how did I get here? And James Brown turns back to the woman who killed him and says, you never left. So that's the James Brown story, folks. And I believe we'll send it back to Larry at this point. Or if you want to talk for a second, Larry, we can do that.
Well, I think what you really want to do is get back to that pie. So I understand.
Listen, I'm going to eat it in 3 big bites. I'm not going to need much time, so we can talk as long as you like.
You don't want to savor that pie? That looks like savoring.
Hell no. There's plenty more in the kitchen. I'll get a second piece after we wrap it.
I see. Yeah. Well, I just briefly, I would say I totally agree about the look of a poem.
Yeah.
What you call it, tongue and groove? Is that what you were calling it when you have the?
I think that's the Carpenter's thing. Yeah, where the 2 parts lock together. This stanza fits into this stanza, but they don't quite meet. You know?
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah.
I haven't heard it referred to as that, but I'll call it like step lines or puzzle lines, where I do that kind of thing. Sometimes I like it, I mean, it keeps the eye moving on the page and
right.
all kinds of pluses to it. We don't have to get into that, but I hadn't heard that
Yeah,
phrase before, and I really
it's
like
just
that.
one of the many hundreds and thousands of ways to direct pace. Since so far as I've heard, none of us is reading formal poetry tonight with accentual syllabic lines and end rhymes and things like that.
Wait, yeah,
Just wait.
yeah,
The other thing is, yeah, I'll wait. But in the meantime, yeah, that's one of the several ways to control pace and make sure that the reader is kind of goes through at 35 miles an hour and it's not barreling through or is not just stuck in the driveway.
right. Good way to put it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will let you get to that pie, even though you're insisting that you can just wolf it down. I don't want you to wolf it down. I want you to savor it. And definitely, in case I forget later, just have Barbara contact me because that would be a pleasure. Yeah, I didn't want, that would be great. Yeah,
She ships.
very kind of you. Very kind of you. All right, eat away, enjoy. He's taunting me now. Yeah. All right. So we have reached my third set. This is all new stuff, and I'm just going to dive right in. One of my, I teach as well. I teach in higher ed, but I've been working as a poet in residence for the Chicago Poetry Center for, over 20 years. And going into schools and reading poetry and teaching poetry to public school students is like, the air that I breathe. And so this first poem, which is called Mr. Fireman Visits Our Class, was inspired by one of the last times, because it's happened a number of times when I got caught up in a fire drill at the school. And of course, you never know when this kind of thing's going to happen. And so we ended up having to go outside, and it was sort of drizzling, kind of similar weather to what we have here today, just this kind of mix of snow and rain and just kind of miserable. But this is not predicated on that particular event at all. And the students that I imagine here are probably older than the ones that I'm with fourth graders. But anyway, let me just read the poem. But that's definitely the impetus behind Mr. Fireman Visits Our Class, which has, now that I look at it, some of what David and I were just discussing in it in terms of the lines. The day Mr. Fireman came, I was so excited I couldn't sleep the night before. He walked in and the room smelled like burnt waffles. He was soaked from a big blaze that morning and came straight from the south side, his hose dragging along the floor like a sleepy snake and oozing water like a runny nose. Be careful, he said, it's wet. How many of you little shits want to be firefighters? A lot of hands went up. He talked about the job and his battalion chief who has a drinking problem and his coworkers like Bob who's always late, Jose and Pete who cook and raise and lower the flags, and the importance of teamwork, even if you don't feel like it. He said, now we'll have a fire drill, and he would check how good we did and rate us on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 the worst. There was a lot of talking as we lined up. The sub was on his phone, and Hector and Shelley snuck out, so the count was off. When we came back, I asked how we did. Mr. Fireman gave the thumbs up and said, 11. This is Doge TED Talk. I believe I need say no more. Left my vape pen in the Tesla. I'll have to muddle through. It's not like there's not lots to do for our efficiency fiesta. The government is my bitch, said no one ever before me. I see things they can't see. That's why I'm fucking rich, yet misunderstood, and why everyone hates me. Don't forget, Grimes dates me. Haters are just jealous turds. SpaceX Starlink satellites blast up into orbit. Tax dollars absorb it, sans protracted proxy fight. Making America great again is a noble undertaking. I'm the noble man remaking American grandeur in blockchain. All right. The last one is called Larry Hotep. Not referencing this Larry, but Larry Sawyer was a poet that I knew when he lived in Chicago. And he used to run a reading series here at Myopic Books, which is a bookstore in Wicker Park. And I think he was the editor or the founder or whatever. Of, I can't remember exactly, of Milk Magazine, but he died recently. And it's just a real shock. And I don't know, nor do I really want to know maybe the particulars. It just sort of, talking about music before the Paul Westerberg, but Warren Zevon is another big hero of mine, and I don't have many heroes. And I'm reminded of that line of his where he said, he's dying from cancer, and he said, enjoy every sandwich. And that kind of like pop back into my head when I thought of hearing that Larry had died. So there's no Zevon in this, but I think it speaks for itself. So Larry Hotep. I met Larry and Lena at a turn of the century poetry reading in Chicago, where they had recently moved. Somehow the conversation, which started, I don't know how, veered to Bubba Hotep, Don Coscarelli's satirical horror movie, which I had just seen. Per IMDb, when residents of their nursing homes start dying of dubious causes, an aged Elvis and an African-American senior who claims to be President John F. Kennedy discover that the perpetrator is an Egyptian mummy with murderous intentions. I have since come to fathom how Larry, with his slyly surrealist bent, was summarily swayed by the casual weirdness of my admiring, if less succinct recap of the bonkers plot. Bruce Campbell as Elvis and Ossie Davis, JFK. I don't think we ever mentioned it again at any of the events our paths crossed, but I think of it now as a kind of cosmic linchpin joining past and present when I heard about Larry's sudden and unexpected passing. Wikipedia says, Hotep is an Egyptian word that roughly translates as to be satisfied, at peace. The word also refers to an offering ritually presented to a deity or a dead person. Hence, be pleased, be gracious, be at peace. I'm not big in the demiurge department. I don't believe in an afterlife, but then again, what do I know? Well, I knew Larry, that past verb tense still strange in its trial phase when spoken. But if there is such a thing, I wish him to be satisfied, at peace. This meager poem my offering, instead of the customary falcon, frog, baboon, cat, cow, crocodile, or vulture, facilitating smooth and safe passage to the field of reeds, kingdom of Osiris, Duat, Dayton, Toronto, wherever his renegade spirit endures. Be pleased, be gracious, be at peace. All right, I will bring Rochelle back in. Rochelle?
That was great, Larry. I was just this week having my students do elegies and talking about different approaches to elegy and alternate types of elegy. So that was really great to hear.
Oh, thank you. When I started out poeting, maybe this is common for a lot of people. I just drew from my well, and then as I've gotten older and just done more, I think in some ways my poetry's gotten more, or rather less personal, at least in an obvious way. I definitely can probably flip through things that have been published and go, oh no, that's very personal, and there's things that are there that are just being told in a non-straight way. But so when I learned, did you know Larry at all? Did you?
No.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's hard for me to know. He was living in Toronto last, but it's hard for me to know what his influence was outside of how I knew him. And I, knew him kind of more casually and more professionally than anything else. But it was always a pleasure to be around him. And so when I learned this, it just kind of really struck me. And I just thought, I was kind of impelled to write the poem. And it's kind of like a return to that more dipping into the well. So, having you say that, I really appreciate it, because I had no idea how it was going to sound reading it for somebody, much less just reading it at all. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And on that note, I will let you have at it, and then we'll see you at the end for the big party. There's going to be fireworks. I can't guarantee there's going to be pie, however. So,
all right.
Yeah.
I'm going to read just 2 poems for this last set, 2 new ones. This is from a new project that I'm working on that is just about finished, just starting to send it around to the world to try and get it published. They're all ekphrastic prose poems that borrow the form of like a gallery card. So the title is the artist, the name of the work, the medium, and the year. And then the information on the gallery card, of course, is more lyrical, more personal. It's kind of a look at art from a very personal perspective. I jokingly told a friend that this project was where I made all of this art all about me. And of course, I hope I'm doing more than that. But I do think there's something to be said for using personal experience as an entry point to understanding art. And all these pieces are works of art made by women. So that's a big part of the project too, is women engaging with the experiences of other artists. I'm going to put, since they are ekphrastic, I'm going to put 2 links in the private chat, Larry, and maybe you can put those in the Facebook chat if anyone wants to see them. They're just links to the 2 pieces of art that these poems are about, in case anyone's interested. All right, this first one is by an artist named Beth Lipman. The material is glass, wood, paint, and glue. This is like an enormous sculpture, like 10 feet tall, in the shape of a tiered wedding cake. And on each tier is a whole bunch of glass sculptures. And at the top, they're all intact. And at the bottom, they start to shatter. And this is on display, I think, at the North Carolina Museum of Art. Beth Lipman, Bride, 2010. I used to say I don't believe in marriage, an incredulous concept, like the Trinity, bad math. 2 become 1 only in eating. But the church has always been hungry. There was a stretch when everyone I knew was getting married in old barns, and I started to think I should too. After 7 years with someone, what is the next level? A loft full of fake hay and peach bellinis? We were already together, weren't we? Together can mean to gather. Ruffles, disciples, desires, tied like kindling. And what a clutter in this dress. Oysters and antlers and candlesticks, butter knives, rabbits, grapes, and gourds, all made of glass. Every fairy tale is a warning, after all. Not a matter of belief so much as heed. This bride's in tears, a still life 10 feet tall, more broken at the bottom, a waterfall. Here, everything in your grasp is shattered. Everything unreachable is whole, a cosmology of desire. We never married, which I only later realized was his call. But in the end, neither one of us was hungry. In a fairy tale wedding, the minister calls the bride and groom married in the eyes of God. So when they begin to carve the bride into crystalline slivers for all the guests, their 2 hands can hold the knife as one. And this next one, which is my last poem tonight, is about a famous piece by Georgia O'Keeffe called Black Iris. This is oil on canvas from 1926. Not until I dated women did I learn about flowers, how they could be performed like penance. Let me in, let me in, let me in. Heaven in that blood-black room at the end of the dark. The heart's long hall, maybe. The iris rations light. How many bright rooms will we enter in a lifetime? The woman who taught me flowers did not want me, and I did not want her. The difference was she wanted to be with somebody. She said she would drain her bank account and run away with me if I needed her to. I leaned over my plate of oysters to say it. I don't need anything. There's something desperate about Van Gogh's messy irises, I think. You could only tell up close how mismatched we were, how I loathed matching. The worse it got, the more flowers appeared in our houses. Miniature roses in the pantry, daffodils on the toilet tank, tulips crushed against window panes. One more bouquet would mean the end. So I waited to see who would buy it, a saving up. Such richness in shadow, inviting. Not until I loved women did I learn how to be mean, an art of plunging inward, singular, singular me. To hell with the scene. I always sit on the side of a room closest to the door, ready. When is the subject its own frame, O'Keeffe asks me. When it lights itself from within, pink sheets overhead, soot skirts unfolding. Thanks.
Thank you. Wow. Rochelle, I hope we get a chance to talk about bad horror movies and why they're better than good horror movies. Maybe we will. Maybe when as we wrap things up and Larry emerges from this big gap in Demi Moore's back, he'll come out and lead that discussion for us. But I want to put in a plug for Jack Gilbert, who actually I don't go to AWP a lot. But I was reeled in this year because somebody wanted to do a panel on Jack Gilbert. And I said, oh, yeah, let me do that. One time I taught his collected poems, which is a fairly thin book for a collected, to a class. And as different as they were, everybody in the class got better. So he's a very compressed, compact poet. But whatever his medicine is, it's just good stuff. So I developed such a crush on him one summer that I began to just write all these poems, and I got a little bit worried about it. And Barbara started calling me Jack. She said, Jack, would you take the compost out? Or I'm making some toast. Do you want some toast, Jack? And finally I said, I'm afraid I'm not being myself anymore. I'm turning into Jack Jr. And she said, well, go ahead. It's going to come out in your poems, in some different and David-ish way later on. I don't know whether that's true or not, but so anyway, if the audience is don't remember or not familiar with, let's get the light right here. Yeah, this is what a Jack Gilbert poem looks like, and this is one that came out of that period. And it's called "Art Is Not Therapy," and it came from a newspaper article I read in the Times about this one team that was. That police team that was involved in solving these horrendous crimes of young women. And they gradually evolved into artists, the cops did. And they would draw pictures, not what you'd think, but well, you'll see in the poem. And it's called Art Is Not Therapy. Agent Bobby Chacon of the FBI dive team looks into the hole his team had cut in the ice of Matanuska Lake outside Anchorage. And the first thing he sees is the face of 18-year-old Samantha Koenig, her eyes wide open. Samantha had been dismembered by her confessed killer months earlier, and her body parts dropped into the lake's fresh, cold water. And now the dive team is bringing them up, legs, torso, head. Serial killers often target girls and young women for good reason. They're smaller, less strong, less experienced, easier to coerce. If somebody calls your name and says your mom's been hurt at work and he's supposed to drive you to the hospital, you might believe him. Veteran cops are supposed to be steely and cynical, but over the years, dive team members have commemorated the dead in drawings that are strikingly similar. And the walls of the team's LA office are covered with depictions of divers anonymous under their helmets, kneeling over children, even babies, their arms outstretched for help. Someone said Van Gogh is as famous as Picasso, But whereas Picasso was a monster of control, Van Gogh was at the mercy of the uncontrollable, that he moved through the world as though ordinary motion were a miracle. Art is not therapy, but it's not therapy. One member of Samantha's team drew her as an angel cradling a dove as a diver lifted her out of the lake. Thank you.
All right, we're all here. Yes, wow, great job. And
I love that last poem.
Well, thank you.
That last one. Art is not therapy.
It's not. You can take that and take out the word art and therapy and use that as it's not. Blank is not blank, but a blank is not blank, and just apply it to about six or 23 different topics a day. Yeah, it's a good formula.
That was great.
Yeah.
Love it. We're all in black, by the way, too. I hadn't.
Yeah, we wore the same outfit.
Yeah. It's almost as if
we
did it, but maybe psychically we did. Oh, and the specs. What's going on? Wow. Couldn't have planned it. So any other things you all would like to plug? Anything coming up that we need to know about? I mean, I discreetly got David to talk about his book. And then I was going to say I love ekphrasis. I had a chapbook that came out not too long ago called Muse. Get the pun there, maybe.
Got it.
Yeah, the Poetry Foundation for a while was doing something with the Art Institute of Chicago, where you could go and, make a long story short, walk around and be inspired, and then would come back and read the poems with a docent from the museum that would gather people up in front of the painting or the sculpture or whatever, and then you could read the poem. So, I mean, I didn't plan to do a book out of it, but then I had all this stuff. It was supposed to be in the modern wing, and then I wandered all around the museum, so I came up with all this other stuff. But anyway, I love ekphrasis, right? And so that was fantastic, very evocative.
I love the idea of the text card because I'm so logocentric that's the first thing I go for. Everybody's standing back and look at the painting, and I say, okay, gee, this is going to tell me why that woman is standing in that scallop shell, and all those creepy figures are around it. Oh my God, it's spring, and that's Venus. Thank you, whoever wrote this helpful text.
Yeah, it's been a really great project to work on because it's kind of like my way of mimicking that experience of being in a gallery or a museum, looking at the art, reading the card, and then looking at the art again, and just spending so much time and attention on a single piece. And
Right.
I think the more time you spend with a piece, the more you can get out of it. There are just so many layers behind what you might get in the first 2 minutes. And I see all these other people like rushing through the gallery,
Right.
looking at something, moving on. And yeah, it's just a totally different experience when you go vertically.
And the nice thing about the text is that half the time they don't know what they're talking about, or at least that's the way it is, especially if it's contemporary art that's much more subject to interpretation. So you can go back and forth and argue.
Yeah.
Well, so you don't have anything else to plug? Come on, there must be. It must be.
Okay. I just happen to have a copy of The Knowledge, which
there we go.
Which is my textbook,
yeah.
Where poems come from and how to write them. It's a fat fella too. I got a call from this. There was a couple 2 years ago from this guy who was a startup publisher, and he said he wanted to publish two kinds of books, as textbooks, but for university undergraduates. He said they had to be from somebody who has won a university teaching award, which I had. So he said he got my name and would I do it? I said, I don't know. That sounds like a lot of work, and I'd rather just write poems. He said, well, too bad, because we were going to give you this really nice advance and then a 15% royalty rate. I said, I think I do think I have a couple of ideas. And it didn't take that long because, by now I had, a mile-high stack of handouts, lectures I'd given, things like that. So this contains everything that this poet knows about the art and science of poetry writing looks like that. And yeah, these two big fat fellas here are the work of the last few years. And so check with me again in a couple of more years, and maybe I'll have something newer.
Sounds awesome. Well, I guess we're kind of done-ish.
Seems like we just started.
I know.
We don't have to quit, do we?
Technically, I think we do. Although we have the run of the night.
Gonna get another slice of that cake.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what's going to drive me out of here, because I haven't had dinner yet. See.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Rochelle, he's trying to rush us out of here so he can get a chili dog.
You're both on East Coast time, yes?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm Central time, so I'm at least it's earlier for me. For you, it's a little bit later. But I mean, having said that, though, too, teaching, I tend to get up early, but I'm a late night person as well. Yeah. So I mean, it's. I'm definitely not like watching my clock as far as that goes. I mean, I'll be up for a while before I go into my little like nightly coma. But the lure of that pie has definitely, set the bar for me for what I'm about to.
Well, just remember the words of your hero Warren Zevon. I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yes.
Sleep is overrated.
I totally agree. Mm-hmm. Both those points. Yeah, Warren, quite the dude. So I was going to give a hand before, so I'm going to do it right now. David Kirby, thank you so much.
We'll clap you back. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's just been a joy.
I really appreciate you both taking the time out of your night to do this. And I knew there was something else in the back of my head. Rochelle, I love the look of your background there. I like the books. I like the lights you got going there.
Thanks. Yeah, it's my little writing nook. I've got my books organized by color because it's easier for me to recall the color of the cover than the name of the book sometimes.
Where is that poetry book?
I'm not very organized as a person. So.
Oh, I've wondered about the organizing by color. I mean, I admit, for myself, I mean, I have my own little system. Right now, as you can see, this is just some of the stuff. It's kind of chaos right now back here. But I was admiring that, and I didn't really think about it. They are all based. It's all color, right? Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Now you got me thinking. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Yeah.
I'm soothed by those books.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We use the chaos system.
Oh, it's looking good.
Yeah, it works at our house. We have more chaos than most people.
Oh yeah, this is just one of the shelves back here, and it just happens to be. We're going to be moving at some point, and one of my plans was to get actual floor to ceiling bookshelves, have them made and put in, but I don't think that's going to happen now. I mean, this is more or less, going to the ceiling, but you can see the spot. Oh, I'm not pointing.
Yeah.
You can see there's like between the top and the bottom. But I kind of like the chaos, but at the same time, I'm really loving the soothing quality of the books back there. So I knew there'd be good poetry tonight, but I had no idea that I was going to be going into like a gentle coma from your books.
Good interior decorating tips.
Yes, exactly.
Gentle coma. I like that. Yeah.
You're welcome to it, by the way. Yeah. So let's, I think, segue into the official goodbye. I won't talk about the future show. Will be 3 months from now. We'll be back, and people can find out about that. But once again, I really appreciate you both being here. I really, despite my having to take care of some technical stuff here, just sitting back and being able to, nothing takes the place of being able to hear the work from the poet itself. And even though we're not in the same room, you both really conveyed what was going, conveyed the work very well through the digital realm. So
yeah,
I really. I appreciate you being here. It was a pleasure.
I met Stephen King one time. I just saw him across the room at a reception and got near him, and he said, "Hello, I'm Stephen King." And I said, "Oh, is that right? I'm David." And he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a poet." And he said, "I think poetry should be read out loud, don't you?" And I was like, like looking. I was like Oliver Hardy looking for the invisible camera. Anybody notice that Stephen King is just talking to me about reading poetry out loud? But if it's good enough for Stephen King, it's certainly good for the rest of us. So yeah, it's just a joy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Larry, for having us. It was great to read with David.
Both of you.
your reputation precedes you as well as your amazing letters of recommendation, best ones I've ever read.
Oh,
This
not
secret,
surprised.
this secret must never leave this podcast. But I love to write letters of recommendation. I mean, I'm still dreaming, but a lot of my dreams have come true. And if I can make that happen for somebody else,
Yeah.
it's gonna-
Yours, because we're both in Florida, we get a lot of applications to our program that have rec letters
Yeah.
from David Kirby, and they're always informational and entertaining, which is so rare for a letter of recommendation. So, yeah.
It's all writing, poem, letter of recommendation, cake recipe. Yeah, you got to hook them, hook them and reel them in.
That doesn't surprise me at all that would be the case with your letters. I like writing them too, but I don't. They tend to be pretty straightforward. They're personal but straightforward, and knowing that there's that Kirby touch to them is
There is.
interesting. Really.
Well, I mean, anything you write, you got to make yourself happy, and I write a gazillion of them, and if I just go over their GPA and their minor and everything like that, it's going to bore the socks off of me. So, might as well. Roll up my sleeves and get into it. Let's have another reiteration of this one time on letters of recommendation. Maybe we can read our best letters out loud.
I like it. Yeah, that sounds great.
That sounds like big box office, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's I guess officially get out of here now. But hang tight. I'm going to go off the air, and then we'll say our private prayers. But thank you again to Rochelle Hurt, David Kirby. It was really a pleasure. Have a good night where you all are at.
And thank you, viewers.
We'll see you soon. Yes, appreciate it.
Thank you for loving poetry.
Yep. All right. We're going to officially go off. See ya.